Might start now. So, hi everyone. Thanks for coming today. I know it's a bit of an awkward time. It's like middle of the week. It's like lunchtime. But I'm so glad that a couple of you guys were able to join. So this session today is mostly going to be a catch-up. So as an inter-uni team, we just want to make sure you guys are on the right track, or if you need any help, this is the best time to talk to us one-on-one. And we'll also be sharing some tips today in the presentation, as well as we'll be posting some extra resources as well. And we got a couple of messages from you guys asking about, how did the teams go last year and the year before in Design Corner, and what did they do? What basically created a winning team? So we'll be going through some of that as well today. So before I start, I'll do an acknowledgement of country. So we would like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today, from the past, present, and emerging, and to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people present in the meeting today. Okay, so the first section today is going to be the catch-up. So I have a link to a Padlet. In this Padlet, if you guys click on it, you'll see there's like lots of tiny little squares or boxes, and your team number is on the top of them. If you're an individual participant, it still represents your team number. And basically, I want you guys to answer 4 questions on that Padlet. And this is just for us to gauge how you guys are going overall as a group, and as well as identify if there's any particular team or participants that are struggling and need our help. So the first question I want you guys to answer: in the world are you focusing on? Like we said in the design brief, you guys had free reign to choose whatever community you want. You could focus on the examples we gave in the design brief, or you could do your own research and pick any community by yourself. So we're curious to know which communities you guys are looking at. Secondly, if you've chosen a particular topic inside ways to access healthcare, so whether that was sanitary items, disease prevention, telemedicine, or emergency supplies, so those are the 4 that we suggested. Or are you guys doing a combination of a couple, or are you doing something completely different? With something completely different though, it still has to be within the larger topic of ways to access healthcare in remote locations. The third question is, we want to know how you're progressing so far. So it's only been 2 days since we've started, but some teams might be full steam ahead, or some teams might still be lost. So we just want to see how everyone is going and what stage you're at. So are you still deciding on a topic, working on a design? Have you already started making your video? And do you need any help with any of those 3 aspects? And the last question is anything else you'd like to share with us. And that could be like anything you want. So I'll give you guys 10 minutes to start doing that. And yeah, at the 10 minutes, I'll like screen share and go through a couple of the responses and maybe answer them. So you can start now, guys.
A few moments later.
Getting lots of detailed responses, which is good.
I would just like to address one question I saw from Team 47. Their question was, do we need to make a physical prototype? And the answer to that is not really. So when we say prototyping, if you could make a physical prototype, I guess it somehow says how creative you guys are or how skillful you guys can be. But when it comes to prototyping, you could just make a concept like visually, like you could either draw it or make a 3D representation on software like CAD or Tinkercad or SolidWorks or whatever kind of software you want to use. Because like everyone here must be also thinking the same thing, like they're actually wondering whether they need the physical thing, but not really. And since it's online, it's up to you how you want to present this. We're very flexible with that, trying to see how creative you guys can be in selling your concept. One question from Matthew in the chat, is 15 minutes a max time limit or the recommended? Can it be less?
Yeah, Yeah, so 15 is just the maximum. We're just trying to think about the judge's time and also keeping in mind how long it takes to convey. Like, obviously, if you're enthusiastic about your design, you'd probably want to spend a long time explaining it. So 15, we decided was like a good amount of time to cover a lot of detail without like going overboard, but of course you can go less. Like the more effectively you can convey your design, your solution, how you address the problem, the better. So if you guys are a really concise team and you're going more for that pitch, like almost like elevator pitch style kind of thing, that's fine too. It's all up to you guys. 15 minutes is just the maximum for creating the video. I remember previously in Design Corner, like the year I participated, which was 2018, we only had 5 minutes to do everything. So like show off our prototype, talk about the problem, why we chose the problem, the benefits of our product, like all of it in 5 minutes was really hard. And even 10 minutes sometimes can be a bit of a stretch, but yeah, it's up to you guys. And obviously with a video format, you guys can edit like out all your like hesitations and ums and ahs. So you can really like refine it down to however long you need. And you can also have like writing on your video. So that might reduce the amount of time you need to speak because obviously people speak a lot slower than they can read. So yeah.
I saw at least 2 teams saying that their team members are not responding at all.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, if you want to email us about that, you can. Like, yeah, because it's all online, it's a little bit hard.
Yeah, because Design Corner used to be held like physically, and it was like shorter. This one is over a week, so it's harder to like manage people this way. Um, and also we cannot, we don't have that environment where it's actually knitted together. Everyone is working in close proximity so that everyone is always engaged. This one is pretty flexible. Maybe we could actually, if they want, they could be combined. Those 2 people who are like left alone by their members, just send us an email through the email that we provided in the slides before the orientation. The emails that we sent out to you, that email address there, you could use that to send any questions or suggestions to us.
Yeah, so a situation like this is understandable. It's much worse when it's an assessment task. Obviously, you guys have free control. But yeah, no, it's definitely stressful. And there are some individual participants, but if you guys feel like that's too much pressure, that's completely fine. Send us an email and we'll try to organize any like solo people that want to be in a team together. And we'll try to organize that as soon as possible so that you have more time to collaborate. Yeah, so getting a lot of responses here. So seeing like a nice range of remote communities and countries that need further development. So I'm seeing Pakistan, dispersed rural community in Argentina, communities in New Zealand or Southeast Asia, movement impaired communities. A lot of you guys are saying not too sure or still deciding. Rural Australia, Mozambique, Malaysian clinical settings. That's really cool. Regional areas in Australia, yep, Indonesian areas, tropical regions in Southeast Asia. Awesome. So seeing a nice spread, which is great. And that's what we wanted from you guys, is to just, the world is your oyster. That's what Alice said before. And truly, like, you guys can do whatever you want, focus on whatever community you want to help out. So you can make it personal, or if you guys come from another country, you can make it personal because you have experience seeing that firsthand, and that plays a huge role with things like empathy. Because as engineering students or IT students, or if you're in this field, you can't just make a product without considering the community and their specific needs. So if you're choosing something, a community that's personal to you, that's great, because you have that advantage of understanding and empathizing with them. And that really helps you come up with a problem statement as well. In terms of topics, I'm seeing a good spread. Surprisingly, I'm seeing a lot of telemedicine. I was really worried no one was going to pick that one. So that's awesome that a lot of you are going for telemedicine. I'm also seeing disease prevention, sanitary items. That's awesome. So there's a good spread here. Probably not as many emergency supplies. But yeah, not all the teams are here, so we don't know the full story. So people are exploring ideas, still deciding on topic. Yep. Have a rough solution. Oh, what team is this? Oh, team 18. Awesome. Have a rough solution ready, working towards refining the solution and finalizing design requirements. No progress on video. That's okay. Like, surprisingly, the video can be like the thing that takes the least amount of time. And I'd rather you guys really flesh out your design and really think about all the aspects before you jump into making the video. Team 22 is currently working on their design. Awesome. Oh, Team 4 is doing emergency supplies. Awesome. Or disease prevention. Still weighing out pros and cons. Okay, awesome. Oh, Team 7's focusing on mental health and well-being. That's cool. Wait, where did that team go? Yeah, mental health and well-being. To what extent should we detail financial needs? Yeah, okay, so Team 7 had a question, which is to what extent should we detail financial means? Obviously, that's hard. I've definitely done projects where I don't know how much materials cost or how much a program or design or something to create might cost, especially if you're thinking about frugal innovation and you're trying to make it as cheap as possible and you're thinking about using local resources or recycling resources. It's really hard to tell what it could cost. So what I usually tell teams is to come up with what it would cost in a commercial setting. So if you were to import like, you know, the finest materials or something, or if you're coming up with a mental health program, I'm not entirely sure what you guys are doing, but if you're coming up with something that is typically expensive, you can talk about how it would cost if you were to not worry about the community's needs and, you know, how they might be financially affected. And then you could sort of do like a ballpark figure on how much your design might cost. So you could say, oh, ours would be 50% less or 75% less because we're recycling materials, or, you know, we're hiring local people and we're providing employment for them. And thus we're creating the product through them and it saves money in that way. So you don't have to go into too much detail if you really don't know, but yeah, just give sort of like ballpark figures. But definitely consider costing. I'll be going through like a bit of a structure for your presentation if you wanted it, and I'll mention costing again. But yeah. So how detailed was this team 2? Okay, how detailed does the prototype need to be? The amount of depth or detail we go into our design, wiring circuits, whether parts will be subsidized. Okay, so that's completely up to you guys, how detailed you want to go into your design. Obviously, more detail, the more impressive it is, but that's completely depending on how much time you guys have, how, you know, how much effort you guys want to put in. But it doesn't, if you guys want to make something really basic on SolidWorks or on Shape or Tinkercad, that shows like the wiring of circuits. I know on Tinkercad you can do like basic wiring and stuff, and you could just like include parts of that in your design, in your video, that's fine. And where the parts will be subsidized by government community. So that's up to you guys. You can make the decision as to whether the government would support your product or design. Or you could style your video in a way that you're trying to convince the government to subsidize parts of your design. You can really format it in any way you want. It's completely free for all. So Team 45 asked, how much room do we have to make the video fun versus professional pitch? The fun direction, but that's just my personal preference, because if you can imagine, these judges are going to watch quite a few videos. There's like 57 of you, and we have like 8 judges, so they're going to be watching a crap ton of videos. So I'm pretty sure they would love to watch something that's a bit more fun and engaging versus something that's quite like very like structured and perhaps boring. Something that I would recommend is humor. I remember I worked with a team last semester on their project, so I kind of guided them in their design. They did something very, very similar to this. They chose a rural community in North Queensland, and they created a solar mobile energy unit, and they kind of marketed themselves as Elon Musk's children. And it was really cute, it was really funny, and they kind of referenced Elon Musk throughout the presentation as a bit of a joke, and it worked out really well for them, and the tutor was really impressed by it, and so was I. And yeah, they ended up getting a really good mark for their presentation, because while the design was really technical and intense and they had a lot of detail, at no point in the presentation did anyone get lost, because it was like constantly diced in with humor, and so it was really engaging to watch. So I definitely recommend making it a little bit fun, a little bit interactive, humorous, because that could definitely take you guys a long way. Let me see. Oh, Team 21 said thank you. You're welcome, guys. We just wanted to do something fun for everyone. Team 14, XA12. Yeah, we just wanted to do something fun, and obviously period very long, like a period of like 2.5 months or something, which is crazy. And we just wanted to do something for you guys, and you know, give you guys experience without any sort of major consequences. So this is an opportunity to try out different things that you've never tried before. Like if you've never tried SolidWorks, now's the time to try SolidWorks. If you never tried coding and you want to learn, you know, now's a good time to try it out, because there's no real like consequences like grades or anything. You won't be marked down, you won't be like kicked out. You're really free to do whatever you like, and go full control on creativity. So yeah. Yeah, I think covered everything. Oh, Matthew asked, does the community need to be remote or just disadvantaged? I think disadvantaged is okay, because a lot of what EWB focuses on is, I guess, helping out the disadvantaged communities in Sydney. I know USyd runs a program where we help out refugees and asylum seekers with like writing resumes and stuff. So I think disadvantaged is fine, as long as they're a struggling community that needs help with access to healthcare. Team 48 had a question.
Team 48's question was, for topics other than that mentioned, do our topics have to specifically link to the broader topics, or can they be other pressing issues as well?
I think, okay, so the broader topic is creating access to healthcare for disadvantaged or remote communities. Ideally, we want you to focus on that. If yours is something connected to healthcare, and you feel like you can make the connection, then, you know, by all means, go ahead. We can't say right out no to you guys. But ideally, the broader topic is creating access to healthcare. So if there's any way you can connect your topic with that, that'd be awesome. Team 26 said, in terms of prototype, once we get the design done, couldn't we have a go in sewing something? Yeah, you guys can do whatever you want. And if that, you know, is part of your design or part of your like prototype or part of your video, go ahead. That's completely fine. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I think that's great. You guys have access to this Padlet board, and we'll post it on the Facebook group. So if there's any teams that didn't like write it and wanted to share, they can do that. So yeah, awesome. Let me just stop share and go back to the presentation. Okay, so a lot of you guys had questions about Design Corner and the previous teams that won. So I thought I might do like a bit of a rundown for Design Corner. So typically Design Corner ran in semester 1 around March or April. So this year, Design Corner was supposed to happen April 17th to 19th. And we had like a whole brief set up. We were like going really full steam ahead with that. And then obviously COVID happened. And yeah, inevitably we had to say no to that because yeah, Design Corner is a 3 to 4 day challenge where all the teams meet up on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they're all like, you know, inside one room, and we run workshops and like lots of team building exercises. And very similar to this, they're given a design brief and they have 3 to 4 days to address a solution and come up with a prototype. So yeah, basically it was a condensed version of Big Design, except you guys have quite a bit more time. And on the second day of the challenge, we would take all the teams to Bunnings or Kmart or any sort of shop they needed to go to, and they could buy we gave them like a little bit of money or a budget so that they could buy the materials they needed to create their prototype for their presentation. And usually all the teams had 5 minutes to present because obviously otherwise, if there's like 20 teams and each team had to do a 15-minute presentation, everyone was going to be there for hours and hours. So we restricted it to 5 and they would present in front of the judges and everyone else. So obviously you guys have the advantage of not having to present in front of an audience. So you can really refine your pitch and come up with a script and, you know, read off the script if you like. But yeah, you guys have definitely a bit more of an advantage in the sense that you can really think through what you want to say and not have to be nervous in front of an audience if, you know, that applies to you. So I know Design Corner has been running for a couple more years than just from 2018. I can only speak for 2018 and 2019 because I participated and organized those years. So in 2018, they had a design brief where they had to address issues related to accessing clean water or a housing crisis or issues with like rubbish being built up along, you know, streets and roads, or they had issues with sanitation. So basically the teams could pick from any of those topics and they were given the community. So they were given a fictional community in India called Makan, and I think it was called Makan. Yeah, it was called Makan, and they had to basically figure out what they wanted to address. Now, the funny thing with 2018 is the way the design brief was written, it was really, really detailed towards accessing clean water. So there was like a little bit of information on housing crisis. There was a little bit of information on like rubbish and sanitation, but there was a crap ton of information for accessing clean water. And so naturally all the teams went for creating a water filter except one. And that one team that didn't create a water filter actually won the whole challenge. So that was definitely a bit of a unique experience. Because there wasn't much variety. So the judges went with the one team that did something different. But seeing what you guys have responded on the Padlet, obviously there's huge variety, which is what we want, because we don't want just one team doing something different and then they win the whole challenge. Though to be fair, that team was very, very good and their pitch was fantastic. Actually, Jasmina, who ran the UIF workshop with you guys, she was in that team. So obviously she's a fantastic public speaker. So naturally that team won, and their design was to recycle the rubbish to create like products that can be used on the daily. So it wasn't a completely like new like crazy idea, but because it was sold so well and because it was much more fleshed out than everyone else creating a water filter, naturally that team won. Now for 2019, we decided we wanted to move away from the typical like, oh, accessing clean water, housing crisis, rubbish, sanitation. While those are all important, we wanted to go for something different because historically those are like the topics that come up with EWB Design Corner. So last year we focused on the issue of fast fashion in Bangladesh. So we just sort of summarized what's happening. And it's recently come up in the news again. I'm sure you've heard that a lot of companies are not paying their workers at all, which is a shame. And yeah, so the industry is quite corrupt, and it's unfortunate because in a way we're all complicit. If you've ever bought any clothes in the last couple of years and you've looked at the tag, it probably says made in Bangladesh. And unfortunately, these workers aren't being paid. So we just brought that issue to everyone and we said, hey, come up with one aspect of a solution. So the teams kind of did all different things, which is what we wanted. We didn't want a repeat of 2018. And basically the winning team was a team from UTS, and they came up with a fire bucket. Now, I actually didn't know what a fire bucket was until this team explained it to everyone. And if you look at the design, I couldn't find a close-up picture of it, but it's just a stick attached to a bucket, and it's held together with some tape. But I think in their presentation, they said ideally it would be tied together with rope. And the bucket itself would be filled with sand, and basically you could tip this bucket over onto any fires. So this team won as opposed to a lot of other teams that came up with very different ideas. So I can't really compare them because they were all really great. But I thought I might go through why this team won and why I think the judges picked this team based on what they wrote on their judging rubric. Sorry, there's a lot of writing. I don't recommend putting a lot of writing on your presentation slides. It's a bad example. I just wanted to convey as much information as possible on one slide. So the first thing that was great about their design was that it was simple and easy to use. The point behind their design was that you could tip, all the workers that are working in a factory are at risk of, things lighting on fire, because if you can imagine, there's just sort of lots of dust particles everywhere. There's textiles all over the floor, scrap material all over the floor. And a lot of the times these materials are flammable and they're just working in really unsafe conditions. And historically, a lot of these factories have burnt down because of electrical sparks or just the conditions being so unsafe. So the team decided to create a fire bucket that can be easily handled by the workers themselves, which is why it has the long stick to help tip it over. So yeah, it was a really simple design and it was very clear on how to use it. Another great thing that they did is that they didn't actually try to fix the issue of fast fashion. They didn't try to say, okay, fast fashion is cancelled. We're going to come up with something completely different. There were some teams that tried to, think of ways to abolish fast fashion altogether, which is fine in as a concept, but obviously executing it is very hard. So what this team did is they didn't try to address fast fashion itself, but they addressed a symptom or a negative outcome from it, which was the dangerous factory fires and a way to put them out quickly without having to rely on, an external fire brigade or something. Another thing is they gave specific real life examples in their presentation. So they actually referenced factory fires that did happen in Bangladesh. So they showed articles on their presentation slides showing how this is a very common thing that happens. So it was clear that there was a purpose for their design and it could actually save people's lives. So they also came up with an effective and functional prototype. Obviously, you guys don't have to worry too much about that because obviously things are a little bit different, but theirs was life size. They actually had sand in the bucket. They had all the materials they gathered were things that people in Bangladesh could access themselves. And yeah, that ties into, they thought about recycling or reusing existing materials. So they didn't think about, oh, we need to import this expensive bucket from so-and-so. They were there's buckets lying around everywhere in Bangladesh. You can use any of them. There's sand that can be picked up from many of the banks and lakes in Bangladesh. And sticks just could be any plank of wood. So it was almost like free. This design was virtually free. So it was also culturally sensitive, so this didn't impede on anyone's like cultural background. Another really nice thing they did is that, I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but on the bucket itself, there's like an image of a fire symbol, so that, you know, makes it clear that this can be used for a fire situation. And on top of that, they actually researched what like a fire bucket is in Bengali, and they actually wrote it out in Bengali and added it onto their bucket as sort of like a design element, which the judges were really impressed by, that they were willing to go to that length to actually learn what the language was. So that's what I mean by culturally sensitive, is that they actually thought about, you know, their language and how can they present it in a way that would understand. What was I on? Yeah, culturally sensitive, because they wrote what it was in Bengali, which was really cool. The second last thing is that it was pitched with a lot of enthusiasm. Like they became salesmen for 5 minutes. It was quite incredible to watch how enthusiastic they were about the design, and they definitely pitched it as if they were trying to sell it, and you were, and the judges were like investors. So yeah, it was really great. They didn't read off any sort of script. Obviously that doesn't apply to you because you guys are making a video, so it doesn't really matter how you present it. But yeah, it was definitely humorous as well. And they sort of gave demonstrations, like live demonstrations on, oh, if there's a fire here, this is the angle at which you would tip it. Yeah, so that ties into the last point, is that they actually included like screenshots of like the countless calculations they did, which isn't a requirement, like you don't have to do maths, but they decided to do a bit of maths as well. So they calculated the force, they calculated the angle, they calculated the stresses along the wooden plank. So that was just like sort of like a extra like cool thing that they were willing to go through. And I think that ties in with the fact that their design itself was quite simple, that they had the time to go into that kind of detail. But yeah, it was a great presentation. And while there were an amazing amount of solutions that people came up with, it turned out that the simplest was the best, because they had the space and the time to go into detail about the issue itself and all the other things that they added in. So that was just an example of what usually happens at Design Corner. We are hoping, well, I don't want to say anything like confirmed, because things are starting to like get a little bit serious again with the coronavirus situation. But we were hoping to run Design Corner in semester 2. Don't know how that's going to go, but yeah, fingers crossed that we might be able to get to do that. And you guys have the advantage if you want to participate in Design Corner, should it happen this year or next year, if you guys are willing to sign up for that. Okay, so the last bit, sorry, going a little bit over time, but I just wanted to share some tips. We did get a couple of messages from people, and I saw on the board as well, like a couple of you were talking about, oh, how do we structure our video, or how do we structure our slides or presentation? So this is just from personal experience. This is not like something solid or concrete. So you don't have to follow this, and I don't recommend you follow it word for word. This is just if you're really, really struggling and you don't know where to start with your video. So mostly I'm going to be talking about structure. I'll post some other like tips on the Facebook group, but this is just what sort of came from the top of my head at the last minute. So structure in your video can be helpful. It can be easy to follow along. Obviously it depends on how you want to pitch your video. So if you want to start off with your design, that's fine. Or if you wanted to start off with the problem, that's okay too. So this is something really basic. And like I said, you don't have to follow it, and I don't recommend that you follow it word for word. It's just only if you're like really, really stuck. So best way to start out is an introduction, so a background on your community, and really empathize with the community, like show that you care and show why you care, like why does this why did this topics or this community stick out to you so much? And then you can lead that and tie it into a problem statement. So what particular issue did you choose to focus on? Was it telemedicine, sanitary items, blah, blah, blah? And why did you choose that? Why did you identify that this community needs help with addressing this issue? And then you can start talking about your design process. So how did you come up with your idea? Did you use the flare and focus concept? Did you use yes and? Did each member of the team come up with one design, and then you came up with like a decision matrix, and then from that you guys were able to pick one design? Something you guys could do is you could include sketches of like initial designs you had and show how you slowly progress to your final design. That's always really interesting, and obviously because you have a longer time limit in the video, you have the space to do that. And then you could show off your final design. You could say, hey, this is where we started, and then we've ended up here. And you could go into the design and the like special components of the design or whatever you've come up with. And if you have a prototype, this is the best time to show off your prototype and say, yep, this is our design and this is what we imagine it to look like. And then, so you could go into how does your design actually address the criteria. So you could, if you guys remember the appropriate technology slides from the introduction presentation, you could say, oh yeah, this is how this design is cost effective. This is how it's sustainable. This is how it, you know, recycles materials. This is how it's culturally sensitive. And you could create a table like hitting all those points in your video if you like. And then you could also talk about costs. So like I was saying earlier, you could compare commercial costs to local costs. So you could say, oh, if I were to make this design in Australia using materials from like Bunnings or something, it would cost like $150. But because I'm recycling materials from this community and I'm also using local labor, which thus creates employment for them, it's a lot more cheaper. You could also talk about implementation plans. So how do you intend to actually introduce this product into the community? Or how do you plan to introduce this like solution into the community? How will you be culturally sensitive? Will you have a research and development program before you start developing the product? So it can be whatever. Are there any disadvantages to your design? Or is there anything that if you had more time, you would focus on? And that ties into like future plans. So this is your design now, where do you see it going in a couple years time? Or if you had more time, what would you change about it? So those are just some like basic things related to structure. So you could take as many of these as you want or as few of these as you want and do your own thing. A pitch is totally personal to you guys, but this is just to help you guys out if you're really, really stuck. And yeah, so last thing is just reminders. So yeah, very important. Submissions are due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So that's the 19th of July. And you'll be provided with a Google Drive folder specific to your team. So no one else can watch each other's videos, ideally. And we'll also give you guys instructions on how to actually submit your video and the slides. Obviously, don't leave it to last minute. So don't decide on like 5 p.m. Sunday that now's the time to start making the video, because obviously upload time takes a while and there's so many things that could go wrong. So definitely don't leave it to last minute. Obviously check the Facebook group for regular tutorials and announcements, because if you saw yesterday, Francis posted some great videos and links that you guys can check out and might actually help you guys out. And there's also like important announcements like meetings and all other stuff. And yeah, that's it from me. Joseph, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
If they would like some more similar stuff, I highly recommend looking at what the Humanitarian Innovation Awards hackathon did last year. Like the pitch was really interesting, the winning one. So we were like looking at this problem with elephants having to go through a village in Cox's Bazar in it's somewhere near Myanmar. I think it's in Bangladesh as well. Um, so there's a village there, and every year they had to like tackle the problem that they face with elephants having to go through the villages because of the migration path that those elephants take goes through it, and we had to find a way to sort of prevent the villages from getting trampled or having the locals have to encounter the elephants in the first place. They're refugees, by the way, people in those villages. And so the winning team was really creative, and they looked at existing ideas and just basically iterated or customized that idea to fit in with the environment that was present in Cox's Bazar. And instead of like having like, you could think of like maybe placing some walls or I don't know, making another path for the elephants to go around the village. But what they did was they looked into nature, and basically they saw an existing idea, which was like elephants are apparently repelled by bees, and so they tried to like make some beehives that the refugees can actually build themselves. There's some distance that they specified. I think it was about 1 kilometer each, like just like posts of beehives, and so that somehow is able to repel elephants, and that was already tested in another place somewhere. And to add on to it, they also added that what do you call it, that red paint on the post, because they said that it also repels elephants as well. I don't know why elephants are scared of the color red. But yeah, they called it bee fence, if I remember correctly, a bee fence. And it was really, I don't know, it took us by surprise actually, because like, when we think about those problems, we think very conventionally. So, we thought of like walls or like digging another path, the elephants could follow that, or maybe like surrounding the whole village with water so that the elephants won't go through it, but still elephants go through that anyways. um, and so yeah, it was safe, and also the people can benefit from those beehives. Like those beehives can be producing honey as well, so it's not just to repel elephants, but it also benefits the village in one way. And it's cheap. um, they're going to be using some bamboo, which is present in that area, to make the bee fence, and also it doesn't really create that much pollution at all, like virtually none. So it was really a good solution, and they won like $5,000 if I remember correctly. That was the prize for the winning team, and they also got some to be featured on some publications. So when it comes to, I guess I think of this thing as a hackathon. It's not really what I call it, a typical engineering convention or some sort of like that. But um, when you want to innovate, you have to be creative. So you don't really have to be very rigid in what you have learned so far in uni. Like you might want to look into solutions that are outside of the box, and look into other tested solutions already. Like your solution could already be existing um, somewhere. You just really need to like make sure that it is what do you call it? It fits into the current context, and it's somehow unique, because if it's already existing, like it doesn't really offer that much to it doesn't really give us too much benefit to use that, so your solution, because we would have to like have to exert more effort into developing that. So really make sure that it can be a bit unique and creative, and yeah, think about the practical aspects of it as well, how it will benefit the people who are living in that community.
Yeah, those are some great points, Joseph. I really liked what you said about, you know, the design. A lot of the designs were like iterations of existing products. So I remember something that I learned in my very first year of engineering is that it's actually very, very hard to originate a product. So originate meaning coming up with something from scratch. So I don't want you guys stressing out that you need to come up with something that's never existed in the entire world before. It's totally okay to innovate, and innovate, like the engineering definition of innovate is actually to take an existing design and change it up for a specific context or community. So definitely don't stress about like having to come up with something completely new. You can take something and modify it to suit your particular issue and community. So that's a really great point that Joseph brought up. Oh, we got something in the chat. Do we have to consider this pandemic for limitations for design and distribution? I think that'd be really cool to think about, things that are happening currently in the world. So yeah, you could totally reference the COVID pandemic and say, oh, typically this material to import would be quite cheap, but because of COVID limitations, it's now slightly difficult, but in the future it might be easier. So you can definitely reference it, and it would make it very relevant to current times. So yeah, that's completely fine. Yep, so that's pretty much it from us. Did you guys have any other questions you wanted to ask? You can pop it in the chat or unmute yourselves. But yeah, other than that, yeah, this meeting's like all good, all done. But yeah, stay back if you want to ask any questions. Thank you so much for joining as well, guys. I know it's like an awkward time and you're probably stressed. I know a lot of you have work and like other things. I know UNSW students are still at uni. Like it's definitely like a chaotic time, but yeah, thank you so much for joining.